Hey there, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. It has been so long since I posted a video. I apologize. If you are a regular subscriber, you've been wondering where are my videos, what's been happening to me. I'm sorry. November was a really challenging month in terms of making any kind of footage. I was doing the NaNoWriMo project, National Novel Writers Project, and I started off doing daily vlogs until my NaNoWriMo project fell apart. In the middle of the month, I started a project, I couldn't finish it. I felt overwhelmed because I just couldn't write at the pace that I needed to in order to keep up the NaNoWriMo project. So I got to about 10,000 words and I stopped. I abandoned the project. One of these days I will edit my whole month footage and put it all together and show you just what happened. But the short version is that I started a novel. I wrote 10,000 words, realized that I couldn't finish it in a month, so I stopped. I gave myself about 10 days to recover. And then I started again on like day 20 and wrote another first draft for a different novel. And so I finished the NaNoWriMo project. I actually finished it a couple of hours early, which was really good. And I did it. I wrote my first draft, so I was really excited about that, but I don't have like full footage of everything that I did in November, although what I did record was pretty interesting, I suppose. So one of these days I'll put it together, but that's November. December, I realized that I had fallen behind on my reading challenge because I didn't read much in November. In November, I only read 4 books. 3 of those were physical books. One was an e-arc that I read. It's called The Difference by Subir Choudhury. The physical books that I read, I started with Jhumpa Lahiri's Interpreter of Maladies. This was her Pulitzer Prize winning short story collection. I totally fell in love with her writing style from this book. The stories were wonderful. Some of them don't come to an obvious point, but just the character development in each one of these stories, the characters are so well developed. You feel like you want to read an entire novel about these characters. Like when the story is ended, you're like, it's too soon, I want more from them. This was a really fantastic read. It was a Pulitzer Prize winner. I followed it up with another Pulitzer Prize winning short story collection, which was Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. This one was made into an HBO miniseries, and so that's the cover of the book. So the difference between these 2 short story collections, in this one, none of the characters are linked. Some of them have similar themes. They're about Indian immigrants. This one is stories about people in a town, but they all relate to this one person named Olive Kitteridge. They all relate to her in some way. And this again is another Pulitzer Prize winning short story collection. I really enjoyed reading both of these books, one after the other, and I wish I had a third similar book to follow it up with, but I didn't. Somewhere in the middle of the month, I read this indie published book, Wallflower Blooming by Amy Rivers. I loved getting this book for a review. The author sent me a beautiful handwritten note that came along with the book, and I just loved it. I still have it in my book. Here it is with butterflies. And she said, "Dear Karen, thank you for participating in my blog tour. I hope you enjoyed the book and look forward to your feedback. Thanks, Amy Rivers." And she sent me her card and her contact information, and I was just so moved by all of this. And you know, the book was self-published, just like my own book has been self-published, so I really enjoyed connecting with another self-published author. The book was interesting. It was about a woman who is public relations. She has her own public relations business, and her best friend and cousin goes into politics and asks her to represent her campaign. She doesn't want to do it, but she does it, and she falls in love with this man from the town, this rich, eligible bachelor from the town, and it's a romance novel. Not very surprising the way it turned out, but it was a really nice, interesting read, and I read it all, I think, in one afternoon, so that was really good. It was very easy to read this book, especially considering the kind of month I was having in November. So 4 books in November totally brought my reading challenge schedule way back. So in December, I have a lot of books to read in order to meet my goal of reading 100 books in 2016. So So I started December with about 15 books to read in order to finish my challenge on time. Since the start of December, I've read a few books. One of them is Draw to Win by Dan Rome. He is the author of a book called Back of the Napkin, where he talks about visual communication, how you can, sketch a little design on a napkin at lunch and get a contract. So in this book, he talks about how we can use those visual tools to make our presentations even better. After reading this, I was very inspired to start drawing more, to draw my characters before I start writing, to draw pictures when I am thinking of notes, because the words, communicate something, but the pictures communicate something even deeper. It causes me to be a little bit more creative, and so it actually improves my note-taking. So I really love this book. I got this from the library, but I am ordering a copy from Amazon because I really want to have this book in my collection. Another book that I read since the start of the month is Moonwalking with Einstein. This is by Joshua Foer. He is a journalist who went to cover a memory competition and just was so intrigued by the memorization techniques that he saw being practiced there that he decided to give it a go himself. And so this book is his training for the next memory competition. Spoiler alert, he won. And so in this book, he talks a lot about memorization techniques as a whole, the people that he met and how some of them use different techniques. He talked about savant memory, which is something that I've been interested in for a really long time. So this was a really great book to read. I'm also ordering a copy of this book for my own collection. See, I already have post-its in this book, even though it's a library book. So I'm waiting for my own book to come so I can change the post-its and put them in my book, because this is a book that I feel like I'll be referring to often. Some of the memorization techniques in here are things that I want to be able to do. One of the techniques that Joshua Foer talks about in this book is a memory palace. The memory palace is one of the tools that these memory competitors use to remember things in sequence. So you use a building, an actual physical building that is someplace that you know really well, like your childhood home, someplace that you can visualize going into and going in sequence from area to area, room to room. And the goal of this technique is that you use the items on the list, create a visual picture, something that stands out in your mind, and put them in sequence in those locations as you go through the room. So when you enter the driveway, you come through the front door, you go into the first room, second room. What are some of the things that you would see in the driveway, at the front door, in that first location in the first room, the second location in the first room, etc. And so that visual picture would help you to remember those items on the list in order, in the sequence. So that is something that I thought was fantastic. This is one of the books that I'll be adding to my collection pretty soon. Other books that I've read since the start of December: The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. She wrote Everything, which I read a few months ago and really enjoyed. She is a Jamaican author. She now lives in the United States. Everything was just such a wonderful read that I thought that this was probably going to have a similar resolution. In the end, it didn't. So if you're looking for that, hint, spoiler alert, it is not the same as Everything, but it is still a wonderful read. I gave it 5 stars. I could think of things that I would have changed, things that I wish were a little different, but I understand why they had to be the way they were in order for the book to work. So complete 5-star rating. I recommend this book wholeheartedly to anyone who likes young adult fiction, who likes light work, light fiction. It is not a terribly deep, profound book. Even though the book deals with some serious themes, it's a great read. I recommend it, even if you're not a regular young adult reader. I think just to support Miss Yoon and her Asian husband, who designs these wonderful covers for her book. I mean, look at this cover. Awesome. Another novel that I've read since the start of December is The Shack by William Paul Young. This is a faith-based novel. This is a fictionalized version of a man meeting the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost in response to something very tragic that has happened in his life. He has been questioning his relationship with God, and he gets an invitation to go to this shack and to meet God, and he does, and it's not a book that I would have picked up on my own. This book, someone actually lent to me because they wanted me to read it, and I read it, and I really enjoyed it. I was happy that I read it. I could see why it's a #1 New York Times bestseller. I don't know how this book kind of flew under my radar when that was happening, but it's a great read. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. It is not so I don't agree with all the doctrinal things in this book, but the theme of the book is wonderful, and it is so beautifully written. Just because a book deals with Christian themes doesn't mean that it's a substitute for the Bible. So if you are a person who is searching for answers, maybe this is not necessarily the book for you to read right now, but people who are able to separate fiction and fantasy will appreciate this book. The next book that I have read and completed since the beginning of December is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I first started this book a few months ago. I read maybe the first section. The book is in 3 parts. I read the first section. I wasn't sure that I loved it, but I kept wanting to come back to it. People were talking about it and saying how they loved it. So I decided to give it another try. In December, I completed the book. I was glad that I read it. The writing style is really great, but had some real problems with the themes of this book. So at some point I will give a full review of this book. Other books that I'm reading right now: The Abundance of Catherines by John Green. This is my first John Green book that I'm reading. It is young adult fiction. It's won an award for young adult literature. I just started, so I am just maybe 1/10 of the way in. So hopefully I want to finish this book by tomorrow. Another book that I'm reading right now is A Game Plan for Life by John Wooden, who is a famous basketball coach. Again, not that far in, but this is the nonfiction that I'm reading right now. Other books that I have on my list for December is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. I've never read this book. I'm not sure what it's about, but I know that it's on like a banned list or something, so that should be interesting. I'm reading The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is one of the books on Oprah's book list, and so that satisfies a category for me on one of the challenges that I'm doing, the Pop Sugar 2016 challenge. I'm also reading Jojo Moyes' Paris for One. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to this in December because I actually have it on a list for January, but I have it and I think it's due back at the library before the end of December, so I might just read it first and replace that book for something else in January. So we'll see. This is a book that I would actually really like to get to before the end of the year. Steve Harvey came out with a brand new book called Jump. This is about taking the leap of faith to achieve your life of abundance, which is something that I need to do right now. So I want to read this. I want to read this so bad. I probably will get to this in December. And in 2016, the first nonfiction book that I read was Intentional Living by John Maxwell. And so to round out 2016, I would like to read another John Maxwell book. This is The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And I'm always reading leadership books. And if I could finish the year with reading this book, that would be really great. And so even if I don't get to my 100 books and I get to 95 books for 2016, I'd still be happy. So that's it. That's what I've been reading the last few weeks. That's what I'm going to be reading for the next couple of weeks. And thanks for watching. I promise I will be back with brand new videos, brand new content really soon. Stick around for that. So thanks for watching my video. See you later. Bye.